Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show, a roughly 1 hour, unscripted, interactive, conversational Bible study between a group of misfits transformed by God's grace. Tonight's going to be a little bit of a different type of episode. We actually are going to have an interview. Got a special guest in studio. I'll get to that in just a moment. In case you don't know, my name is Zach Adams. I'm a Christ follower, husband of one, father of three, who's been incredibly blessed to pastor, I think, the greatest church around, Calvary 316, which is located just outside of Athens, Georgia. If you'd like to learn more about the church, if you're local to the area, just check out calvary316.com. If maybe you're not local to the area, but you want to see what we're doing, we live stream our service 10:30 Sunday morning at calvary316.live. Again, you can learn more about the church, calvary316.com. Tonight, I'm joined in the studio, and we're going to actually reverse the order of things here a little bit, Creighton. I'm joined in the studio by the man that needs no introduction, the maestro of this dysfunction.
Yes. Thank you for telegraphing that and doing such a good job.
I was good. And then I switched it all up in my brain.
Man.
Creighton, welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show.
Thanks for having me, man.
You are the producer of this dysfunction. That was the line I was going for.
Man.
I know, and it's right in front of me. All I have to do is read it, but I didn't. I just totally.
You did a really good job telegraphing what we were going to do. I was on board. Everyone in the room was on board.
I did an onside kick, and I stumbled over like 5 yards in.
Yeah,
that was terrible. Anyway, so Creighton is, as always, is the producer. Creighton, with the live stream, you monitor the comment section. So part of the show is kind of its interactive quality. It kind of explain to the audience, if they do want to interact, how they can do that very quickly.
Basically, on the right side of your screens, or on the bottom if you're on a mobile, there will be a comment section, whether on YouTube or Facebook. Type in a comment on that comment section. I just realized my camera's not there. It's there.
Yeah, I know we've changed quite a few things.
Yes.
Just looking up.
So if you want to post a comment, questions, comments, concern, any kind of
go to me real quick.
Thing.
This is Creighton. So we have
Yeah, no. That was very well done. You switched things up
We
on me,
did.
man.
We had to switch some cameras around and add some audio. Again, it's for tonight, kind of the special episode, which has thrown us all totally out of whack. So anyway, an unscripted show.
Very much so.
Interactive.
Unscripted.
So if you're watching, again, if you're listening on the podcast, check us out. Check out the live stream. Normally Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock, but again, tonight is one of those unique episodes where it's a 7 o'clock start time because the Braves are in the World Series, which is wonderful, and they play at 8. So again, if the Braves get to a game 7, next Wednesday will be a 7 o'clock episode as well, and then we'll get back to the normal 8 o'clock round. So if you're listening on the podcast, check out the live stream. Our YouTube channel is outlawradio.live. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/theradiooutlaw. Let me get to the other chaps that are in the studio, and I'm going to kind of work really kind of from my left to the right here. So as always, we've got Nicholas Monty and Deal Daddy Derek in studio.
Hello.
How are you guys doing? Good week?
Doing good. Yeah.
Hey, Braves won game 1. Good thing.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm excited for game 2.
I like that you're rocking your Calvary 316 hoodies. It's that time of year here in Georgia.
I'm just glad it's cold now.
Yeah,
I'm glad we're able to pull them out.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're joined, and this is kind of the crescendo, what we've been building towards, Mr. Kenneth Snipes, also a.k.a. Kenny. He's not really sure what he's called. Kenny, welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show.
How's it going?
I love the fact that you're rocking Braves gear.
Absolutely, man.
So how long have you been back in town?
A week today.
A week today?
Yeah.
How long will you be in town for?
Until Thanksgiving.
Until Thanksgiving. So you
We're here
guys
for about a month.
are having quite a nice little vacation, kind of a reprieve.
Absolutely.
So you are a missionary.
Yeah, that's what they call me.
You are a missionary. So what I want to do here is I want to start by what it is you guys are doing right now. And then we're going to rewind the clock all the way back to the beginning, and we're going to kind of go through a story of how you got to right now. So you are married to you outpunted your coverage, and you have some beautiful kids. Introduce them. Tell us who they are.
All right. So my wife is Nikki Snipes. Used to be Nikki Nikino. She had a much cooler name back then.
Used to be Nikki Nikino.
Yep.
I was her youth pastor,
Yep.
by the way. Yes.
So, and then we got two kids. Jack is 5 and Mary is 3.
5 and 3.
Yep.
Now, where do you live?
So we currently live in Siguatepeque, Honduras.
Say that again.
Sigua for short. Siguatepeque. Yeah.
And so, why are you living there?
So we felt like that God's best place for us, what He had. I don't think God's will is this like mystical thing. I think as long as we're following Him, we're pretty well in God's will. But I think He does.
Amen to that.
There's certain places that are better for us to be. And a few years back, Nikki and I made the decision that we felt like that Honduras was where God wanted us to be, and so that's where we're at.
So you're living in Honduras with 2 little kids. When did you move to Honduras?
So we moved to Honduras. I think the date was February 6th of 2020.
So February 6th of 2020, you decide to leave America and move to Honduras. Now where is this town that you're located?
Dead center of Honduras. It is actually the geographical center of the Americas.
Of the Americas.
Yeah.
There's that much above it as below it.
Yep.
That's pretty crazy. I would never have thought that.
Yeah.
So you relocate your family a month before the world shuts down into this global pandemic. Why did you move your family to Honduras?
Well,
Other than the fact that the Lord led you to, like, what was the purpose? What was the goal? Why was the Lord leading you?
Well,
to the middle of Honduras.
Do we want to do the rewind now? Do you want to do that?
Well,
now?
we'll get to that.
Okay.
I want to get to specifically what you guys are doing, and I'm moving you that direction, and then we can reverse it.
I gotcha. So, I mean, the Bible says Jesus' famous last words were to go make disciples. That's what He said.
Amen.
And we lived in Honduras in the past, and we'll get to that. But one of the things we saw was that there's a lot of people that are doing great things, but it's not making disciples. There's a lot of people that want to get people to get saved and meet Jesus, but then beyond that, they're not training people to get to know Him better or to build that relationship. And so one of the primary reasons we wanted to go to Honduras was to help contribute to that and do what Jesus said, make disciples.
So you, your wife, your kids, you leave Atlanta, Georgia. You move to Honduras, early February of 2020, and you go to work. You have an organization first that you guys have started. It's called the Bridge, right?
Bridges across the mission field.
Bridges across the mission field, and your goal, kind of the vision that you had, aside from just like the general go into the world, make disciples, which is again what Jesus did. So it's not a generality we should avoid. But you went with the specific intention of trying to network.
Absolutely.
Among missionaries.
Yeah. So another one of the things we saw was there's almost a sense of competition among missionaries, which isn't really kingdom oriented. They compete. It's like the First Baptist Church and the Second Baptist Church.
Oh no, in America, all the churches work together.
Yeah.
There's none of that in America. We're all one team.
So we saw, in the missionary field. I mean, first of all, Americans tend to stick out in a place like Honduras. Typically, even the missionaries are going to drive nicer cars. They're going to live in nicer houses. I mean, my kids are like pasty white, blonde haired, blue eyed kids. They just stick out down there. And when you stick out, and people notice you, it kind of, I feel like it's kind of a given that you need to, it needs to be more evident that you're a Christ follower, because we're walking down the street there. I mean, when I do something that may be common, say something rude or whatever, it means a lot more. It carries more weight because
it's like kind of where you're at. If someone sees you guys, you stick out so starkly that it's like the only reason these people are here is because of Jesus. Like there's no other explanation for why these pasty white people are in our town.
Central Honduras is not a destination. Is not a vacation destination.
There's not a beach in the middle of Honduras.
No, this is not the cruise. Where the cruise ships dock. It's not like that. And so one of the things we realized was that a lot of missionaries, they saw each other as competition. They didn't really do a lot of work together. And even sometimes if one missionary is drilling wells and he's working with a certain village and somebody else is doing some sort of sustenance farming or they're something to reach the people, and you step foot in the guy's area where he's working that's drilling wells, he gets offended, even though you're doing completely different kinds of work, or he takes it as an offense that you're trying to like take his people.
These are my treasures in heaven.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave me alone.
Exactly. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was go down and
build relationships,
try to uphold relationships and show other missionaries and other ministries, Honduran ministries and run ministries as well, that they can you can work together. This is kingdom oriented stuff. You don't have to be the same denomination. You don't necessarily, as long as we have the same core beliefs, which is Jesus, that he came and died for us, that that he has enough grace to cover us, that he rose from the dead. We can work together to help people,
right?
Not only to do humanitarian things like feedings and giving out clothes and teaching people how to, improve their life, but to make disciples.
I will say, and again, we're going to rewind the clock for a moment, but I do want to unpack an idea that you introduced. Obviously, from a very practical standpoint, when missionaries in a foreign place work together, it enhances the witness. Hey, we're getting we're brothers and sisters in the Lord. We're all in this together. We've all made similar sacrifices to do this, to minister to this community and these people. So that's a very practical thing of just the way that the world, perceives missionaries. What a poor witness for missionaries to be backbiting, to be gossiping, to be slandering, to be fighting one another. That's not kingdom minded at all. That's division. And the Bible speaks a lot about the importance of unity from just the way that the world views us, to the point that Jesus even exhorts us, and Paul adds to this, is that like, hey, if you have to just be the offended and eat that, if it's for the benefit of unity, do it, because the world is watching.
You got to drop your pride to do that, though.
Right. Well, yeah. There's a lot about Christianity that necessitates the dropping of pride.
Yeah.
To have any core purpose behind it. However, I do want you to unpack though a little bit about the practical benefits for missionaries themselves, not necessarily just the way that the world views missionaries, but like you kind of mentioned, you have one guy that might be drilling wells, and that's his ministry, and you got another guy, that's that's doing some practical training on farming and basic necessities, like you would think, hey, water and farming, totally different, but man, they could kind of package together pretty well.
Absolutely.
And so kind of you guys being down there, you're seeking to be that bridge of like, hey, there's a benefit in us working together for what we're individually called to do. Would you say that that's kind of part of what your mission is?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when we lived there before, we were walking through the grocery store, and I was desperate to speak English with somebody. We were very young missionaries, very young. We were kids when we moved down there. And I saw this guy. I knew he was a missionary. Went to go talk to him, and he like darted down the other aisle of this little grocery store we were in, and just completely, ignored me. And that right there, I mean, just that one action made a big impact on me.
It's like, I need to speak English with someone, please.
Yeah. And I just, in my naive mind, I just thought that's what missionaries did. I thought there was a missionary community. And
right, okay.
There was, but it mostly consisted of people that had been there for 25 or 30 years, and anybody that had been there for less than that, they hadn't like joined the club yet.
So it was a missionary clique, not a true missionary community.
And they're, the reason that the clique existed is because so many people go on the mission field and they're there for 6 months and then they leave. And so you naturally don't want to build trust with people who are not going to, they're not going to stick around.
And that makes sense. I mean, it's hard to knock.
Yeah. So, and after dealing with 25 years of people coming for 6 or 9 months and then leaving, I guess I can get that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So part of your mission, and I know that, like, for example, in a practical sense, like your wife is leading a Bible study
she's leading 3 Bible studies right
now. But
yeah.
She's like, your focus is ministering to missionaries as well as to the community.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a very unique missions perspective. So often, missionaries are very tunneled, and God gives them a very clear calling, a mission. This is what I'm doing. You guys have a bit more of a broad, and I would say palatable, moldable. You get on the ground and you're ebbing and you're flowing to whatever the needs happen to be. And again, you went down there in February, and we'll get to this. Thinking it would be one need, and then very quickly, like, the world changed and Honduras changed and
drastically.
And so you couldn't be rigid. You had to be flexible, and you had to kind of go with the flow. So
absolutely.
Knowing what you do now, and I, maybe before we backtrack, Creighton, you, Derek, Nick, y'all have any questions about what they're doing from a very practical standpoint? Anything? You guys are here, you're listening, you're absorbing. Before we get all the way back to the beginning, because for me, the obvious question is like, how in the world, do you grow up in the same place I did and end up in Honduras?
Yeah. My question would be, how do you raise 2 children in another world, basically? Because your kids are young, right?
Yeah. 5 and 3. So,
man,
it's a good question.
That's a good question. It's a loaded question. I'll say this, we were 100% going to have our kids in a school. We hadn't decided if we were going to put them in private school or a public school, but we were not going to homeschool our kids. That was one thing that me and Nikki said before we got married, before we got engaged. We just said we didn't want to homeschool our kids, that we wanted our kids to be in school. And then we moved to Honduras 6 weeks before the pandemic hits, and everything shut down. And in fact, Honduran public schools are still closed. Honduran private schools are still closed if they haven't found a loophole yet. Which some of them are trying to find loopholes because people
enough's enough.
People got to go to school. People and the people that work at the schools got to make money. They got to make a living. So it was tough when we moved down there. The kids were really sad to be leaving their grandparents. Sad to leave their church. We were 100% going to get it, plugged in the community. We didn't want to separate ourselves from the community. We wanted to integrate as much as we could into our neighborhood and hanging out with people. And so
the Hudson Taylor model for all points and purposes.
Yeah. So we did, we wanted to be separated spiritually, obviously, but not, but we wanted to be plugged in. And so that was really difficult because 6 weeks after we got there, we were stuck behind a 10-foot concrete wall for all intents and purposes. So
we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
But once everything opened back up, we had our kids in Spanish classes.
And they probably already know Spanish.
They were taking Spanish classes. Our Spanish teacher quit coming because of the pandemic. And then it was really just Nikki and the kids in our house. We had a 10-foot, concrete wall around us. We had electric fence on top of that, and then razor wire on top of that.
Oh
And
my
so,
gosh.
That's just the way it is. Big solid metal door that leads out to the street. And
We have to do that in the Providence Club too. So I totally understand.
But my kids didn't see outside that road, except for occasionally, like I'd get tired of being behind there. So I'd walk out the door, and literally you're not allowed to be on the street.
Wow.
You're really, I won't get into all that, but like I would bring Jack outside and we'd pace in front of the house on the dirt road occasionally, but that's all they saw for months was that.
What are you practically, what are you guys doing right now?
So now that everything's kind of, well, not everything, but a lot of things have kind of calmed down. We've joined a church. It's a Spanish speaking church. Our kids are in children's church. And there is one teacher in there that kind of cheats and says some stuff in English, but they're learning great Spanish. 3 days a week they're in it's technically, if the Honduran government is listening, it's a daycare, but it's a private school that it's a Spanish speaking private school.
It's a wonderful daycare.
It's a wonderful daycare. Nikki actually helped them launch the school this year and was the initial English teacher until they were able to bring somebody on that wanted to do that.
That knew English.
That knew English. Yes, that was the prerequisite for the job. Was speaking
English teacher.
So, but the kids are in the school. They love it. They have tons of friends. Their Spanish ability is quickly going to surpass mine and my wife's. And I mean, they've done well. I mean, it's weird. I take Jack to the grocery store, and he gets people pet him.
Little white kid.
Yeah, everybody's got to run their hands through his hair and stuff, and he hates that.
He's not a ghost.
Yeah,
there's substance to him.
There is, but that's one of the weird things. But he's playing soccer. The kids they got karate class that we take them to, and they're loving life. They really enjoy it. We've got a huge yard that they can play in. They've really started to get to know a lot of the missionary kids. One family that we're pretty close to has 2 kids the same age as Jack and Mary, and actually their foster daughter actually stayed with us for about 3 months.
Okay,
so that was the kids are getting integrated. I mean, they have more friends now than they did when we left the States.
That's awesome.
Wow,
yeah.
so cool.
What from a ministry standpoint, what are you guys currently doing?
So from a ministry standpoint, we've partnered, and I'll start with Nikki because it's easy to talk about the stuff I do, but Nikki's leading 3 Bible studies. She's leading a missionary wives Bible study specifically. She's leading a mom's group that's open, and both of these are open to locals and missionaries.
Very cool.
But they're in English. They are English Bible studies. And
Nikki's not fluent Spanish, but she can hold her own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Nikki's Spanish is increasing much quicker than mine because all of my ministry partners are also bilingual. So
Nikki's much smarter than you.
She is. I won't argue with that. So, but she's leading these Bible studies. She's helped start with another missionary, a moms and littles groups that they meet, I think once a week, and they hang out at somebody's house. They have a little Bible study for the kids, some activities.
That's great.
They're doing that. And these are, that's a really cool thing for the kids, but it's also a big thing for the moms because there's different struggles in a country like Honduras. There's things that moms deal with here that they all have in common, but then you go there and there's things that nobody here, you can't talk to anybody here about it. You can't call mom. You can't call mom at home and ask her about this because the problem doesn't exist here. So it's a really great opportunity for her to pour into those other moms and for them to pour into her as well.
Building community. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And being inclusive with the Honduran, the local Hondurans around us too, that want to be part of that community. It's really cool. And then I'm actually, I've done a lot of stuff. Like Zach was saying, I've had to be very flexible with ministry over the past year. But what we're currently working on, I've got a really good friend, Kike Vega, born and raised in our town. He was actually supposed to be here in the States fundraising with me, but travel plans changed. So he and I have been working together to launch a ministry called Ascenso, which is the Ascent or Ascend, I think. And it's basically an outdoor discipleship ministry for young people, for teenagers. Okay. And his passion has always been the outdoors, exploring Honduras. it's kind of a weird thing. That's not something that people do down there, is just go hiking for fun, because they have to hike to work every day. And so there's, he's really gotten into for a few years, he got into ecotourism, and then the pandemic hit and there were no tourists. And so he and I had been working together over the pandemic doing some different projects, and he told me about what he had been doing and what his new vision was, which was to relaunch Ascenso as a ministry. And so we just finished what we called a vacation Bible school for some kids in town. We had 8 kids that signed up for the first program. We wanted to start small to see what was going on.
Yeah.
But it was like a hybrid of like Boy Scouts and youth group, more or less.
Sounds awesome.
And we took the kids, right outside, right in their own backyard. There's these beautiful waterfalls and mountains to climb. And we took them, we got them all hooked up with mountain bikes, took them on a mountain biking adventure. And this was twice a week that we were doing this. And every adventure that we went on, of course, had a Bible lesson, a Bible study, a Bible discussion to go with it. And just spent a lot of time getting to know these kids, paying attention to them.
Is there, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, because there's a big topic I want to address.
Yeah.
That's relevant to America and some of the things that are going on here. Is there, do you find that there is, because of migration, that there's a lot of fatherless homes, that there's a need for young, Honduran teenagers to have mentors? Like, is there uncles,
specifically male leadership?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them have migrated north for work,
Mm-hmm.
are repatriating paychecks, back to Honduras from America. So, I mean, that seems to me like that could be a pretty significant need. But, we have a big fatherless crisis in American culture, specifically among African-American communities. Is the same thing. Explain that a little bit from the Honduran perspective.
Another one of the groups that we're working with is in a community called Villa Alicia. And there's quite a few kids in that community that are fatherless. And not necessarily because their dad left to come to he left to come to the States. A lot of the kids don't even know who their dad is, and their mom doesn't either. It's a crisis there, just like it is here. And one of our big focuses, especially with Kike, that I'm working on is giving these kids that male leadership, and not only teaching the young boys how they need to act and how they need to conduct themselves as they grow, but also teaching the young ladies that are around how a man should treat a woman, and how these young men should be respected. And so that's definitely an issue. There's a lot of, I personally only know 3 people that have crossed the border. I mean, we've been working on Honduras for 13 years. I only personally know of 3 people who have illegally come here to work and stayed.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating, actually.
We'll get to that.
Yeah,
we will get to that. No, I find that to be very interesting.
Yeah. So, but there is that thing, and everybody, you talk to these kids, especially in the poor villages, the further you get from our town and up into the mountains, you ask kids what they want to do, and they say they want to travel through Mexico and go to the U.S. Like, they don't want to be an astronaut or a police officer or a news anchor or whatever. They don't want to be a football star. Their answer is, I want to go to the U.S. They
don't say, I want to be a producer for Outlaw Radio like Creighton.
No.
They're not aspiring that high.
No. So so it is really sad to have those conversations and deal with that. But that's one of the things that Kike and I we feel like that's one of the burdens that we are going to carry.
Well, let's get back to the beginning. So give a little bit of background, just kind of how you grew up, how your wife Nikki grew up, how you guys met, the origins of just missions, your first exposure to missions. I want the audience to get a taste of like how do you end up here? It's like one thing to meet a missionary, but it's like, how do you get to being a missionary? And then how do you end up doing that like full time? And how do you, because you're supported. Do you have a work permit in Honduras? No. So, I mean, you're supported by, you had to raise support. People had to come behind you. And so kind of take us back to the beginning, walk us up through at least the pandemic, traveling down there.
Okay. Yeah. I'll try to do the short version. So
we've got 28 minutes.
Yeah. So I was raised in church. So was Nikki, for the most part. And we were both here from Lawrenceville, Georgia. I mean, we both grew up very similarly. Nikki grew up in Calvary Chapel. I actually grew up in a Pentecostal church. and moved around a lot. I went to I think 11 different schools from kindergarten to 12th grade. So Nikki stayed in the same house basically her entire life.
Do you encounter a lot of Pentecostals in Honduras?
Yeah, we do. That's the charismatic movement is huge in Central America.
Yeah. So when I've done missions in Cuba, and like one of the main sanctioned denominations, the Methodist. But oh man, it's not what you think of Methodist. Like
Same thing with the Catholic churches, man.
It's very charismatic.
You hear the Catholic churches from a couple blocks away, so it's interesting.
That's okay. So it's the same.
Yeah.
That's more of a full Central America, Caribbean.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably
So-
Latin America as a whole, really.
So it kind of helps you. I mean, you kind of came from a charismatic background, so
Yeah.
you have some understanding
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
some of the theology that roots that, etc. So
So
back to your story.
So we were raised in church. I don't guess I really took it all that seriously, but throughout my life. But when I got into high school, is when I came to know Jesus, and Nikki's mom led every Bible study, was at every church function. I mean, and Nikki was right there on her, coattail. Nikki told me that, and you can confirm this, but even the mission trips that the kids weren't supposed to go on, somehow Nikki always ended up on the trips because her mom was on them.
We did whatever we could to get Renee to go.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, absolutely. So Nikki, it was funny actually when we were, going to leave this last time. Pastor Sandy actually said that I think Renee was, she was obviously a little upset that we were planning to leave, and he looked at her and he said, "Renee, it's your fault, right?"
Yeah.
Because I mean, that was something that David and Renee planted in Nikki's heart a long, long, long time ago. So fast forward to high school, that's when I met Nikki. I was a senior, she was a junior. The year before we met, my junior year, my parents put me in a new Christian school thinking that one would fix me, and it didn't. And but this girl that I had kind of had a crush on was going on a mission trip. Not Nikki, a different girl. And I found out that I didn't have to make up any schoolwork if I went on this mission trip. And
Missionary dating. I love it.
And it was a week away. It was a week away from home. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to go on a mission trip.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what a mission trip was.
Yeah.
But
serving Jesus with women.
yeah. So whatever it takes, right? So I went on this mission trip, and actually that mission trip was in February of 2007, and I got on that trip, and God just kind of wrecked my world. It wasn't a great relationship that I was in with that girl at that point. We were dating, and so God just he wrecked my world. That first mission trip to Honduras in 2007 changed my worldview completely. Changed my view about him. And so
Isn't that funny how the Lord
Yeah.
works? Like you go for one reason that might be completely carnal and inappropriate.
Yeah.
And misguided. And the Lord's like, no, I'm still way into this.
yeah. I mean,
You don't know why you're going, but I do.
Yeah. And he did. He had a plan. And so we fast forward another year. I had met Nikki, and we weren't dating or anything, but we both showed up at the mission trip meeting. I didn't know she was going to be there. Showed up at the mission trip meeting. We ended up dating, going on this first mission trip together, and it was just something we were passionate about. It was funny. This is probably my fault, but the teacher at the school that was leading the mission trip actually pulled Nikki and I aside and said, it was Valentine's Day, 2008. Actually, we were in Honduras again, and she pulled us aside and she's like, look, you're on this trip. But I know that you're not really here because you care about missions or even care about these people. You're just here because it's a week for you guys to hang out. And she's like, and whatever, that's fine. But she's like, I'm just going to need you to behave yourself. You guys don't really have a future in missions. And I'm just gonna leave it there. Renee was on the trip. And so she told Nikki, she's like, look, you just need to stay close to your mom. Kenneth, you need to stay close to me. And this is it. That was my senior year in high school. Nikki was a junior at that point.
Second trip to Honduras.
So second trip to Honduras, we were told that we didn't have a future in missions, and that didn't get brought back to my remembrance until years later. And Nikki thought Nikki remembered it. And actually, I need to clarify this now. Both that teacher and her daughter are both on our support team now.
Nice.
So,
my God.
So she's there's a measure of grace.
she did apologize to us for that whole talk that we had. So that was good.
It might have been it was the right talk in the right moment.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. I mean, it honestly probably did. I don't want to admit it, but it probably did change my focus a little bit, on the trip. And maybe
Rebukes have that way of
Yeah.
having an impact.
Yeah. So we went on our first trip together, and then after that, Nikki and I started penny pinching and saving money, and we went on every mission trip we could together. We got married in 2012. We actually got engaged in Honduras on the beach in 2000.
So you've had this heart for Honduras dating back since high school.
Yeah, since high school. I mean, we really just for whatever reason, God put Honduras in our hearts and kind of burned it in there. And it's been one of those things ever since high school. I don't know how many Honduran people you guys know here in this area, but literally every turn I would run into people and kind of be forced into relationships with people that were born and raised in Honduras or in the States now. It was really weird, but God has a way of directing us. If we don't go easily, he has ways of, kind of guiding us down the path he wants us to go down. So 2012, we get married. That was in November of 2012. And in June of 2013, we decided to off our first house, sell all our stuff, and move to Honduras. Nikki was going to teach English at a private school there, and I was going to go work with the ministry that we'd been working with since high school, since 2007, and just do whatever they needed. They had a 10,000 square foot medical clinic. They needed construction guys. I actually helped lead a couple construction crews on some different church projects, things like that. Some mechanic stuff, working on tractors, just whatever they needed. And
so we're like, let's go, let's do this.
Yeah. So we didn't have to give much up to, go save the world because we were already broke.
It helps.
We left.
It helps. There's a silver lining in being broke.
We did everything the wrong way. That 9 months was learning how not to be a missionary.
Explain.
It really was. So we didn't
examples?
We didn't seek out any advice. We just felt like that's what God wanted us to do, and so we were going to do it. We didn't seek out any advice. We didn't seek out any wisdom from pastors, from parents, from anybody. We just told people we were going. We didn't do any fundraising. Nikki was making, I believe, I might be mistaken, it might be $300 a month. If she's listening, she might comment what she was making, but she had a stipend of $300 a month.
Solid. You can totally live on that.
And housing. We had a 2-bedroom apartment, and we had to pay the utilities, which isn't much down there. I mean, and the water never works anyway. So, so we went there, $300 a month. We had a couple of people that knew we were going, and they're like, well, do you need money? And so one guy, he was actually one of my old bosses.
He's like, you do know you need money, right?
And so he actually would send us checks. He would send checks to my parents' house, and they would go put them in our bank account. And when people would visit, they would just bring us like a wad of cash because we didn't have bank accounts. Transfers were too expensive. We did a lot of things really badly. Also, I thought that being a missionary and making disciples and that whole lifestyle was actually what we were supposed to do, was Americanize people and make them more like North Americans.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to revolutionize construction, mechanics, all these things, and tell everybody there that they were doing it the wrong way. They needed to do it this way. And
solid strategy.
Solid, yeah.
Sounds like that was going to really work.
Yeah.
Well,
I also was learning how to be a husband, which is I'm still learning that.
Yeah.
But
no, I was born with the gift, so I understand.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to really relate.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah.
So we did that. We did our thing, and 9 months after we got there, Nikki started getting really sick, and so we were sending her across the street to the doctor, to the hospital, and she was going, and they were doing blood tests, they were doing all these different things. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. And so we decided we were going to come back around Easter of 2014. We were going to come back. Nikki signed up like a week before we were supposed to come back for what's it called? Obamacare, because we didn't have any health insurance. And and we were broke. So it worked out. So she signed up for Obamacare, and we were going to come back and just go to some doctors and see. She was having all kinds of pain and stuff.
Figure out what's going on with your wife.
Yeah, and then come back. That was the plan. Be in the States for maybe a couple of months or whatever it took for her to get well, and then come back. And I believe the week before, we'd already bought plane tickets to come back. And the week before we were supposed to come back, we had this huge event for the medical clinic that I was working in. We had a big party. Everything in Latin America is a party. When you do something, you got to have a party. And so we finished the second story, built all these cool dorm rooms and stuff out for missionaries. And we were having this big party. And I remember, one of the nurses that are at the medical clinic that she sang in the church. She was part of the praise band that I helped out with. And I remember her telling Nikki, she's like, I know you may not believe it, but you're pregnant. I believe that's what the deal is. And Nikki's like, nah, whatever. She didn't really say anything. When we got home, Nikki sat me down on the couch and handed me a pregnancy test. And so, of course we were excited.
I have a parasite.
I was scared to death. Yeah, definitely. And we come back, everybody's all excited. Nikki gets these cute little Honduras wood carved painted boxes and puts a couple pacifiers in them to give our moms at the airport when they pick us up to reveal this big thing. And everybody's screaming and crying in the airport, and it's kind of weird and all that. And Nikki ends up going to Kaiser Permanente over there in Duluth or whatever, and it's her first checkup, and they tell her the pregnancy is not viable. And man, it wrecked us, especially Nikki. I was, like I said, I was still learning how to be a husband. I didn't know how to be a husband on the good days.
And you don't feel, I've been there. I've gone through that. You're not identifying. She's got morning sickness. So at least she's feeling, there's an immediate weird biological connection.
Well, and we had been really stressed out too, because we didn't know what was wrong with her.
Right.
The hormone levels and all that stuff, she had taken pregnancy tests and none of them had, worked out. Everything was negative. And so we come back and that just kind of wrecked us. And, a couple months in the States turned into 6 years. And, we recovered from that, but we just kind of forgot about Honduras. We had boxes of stuff packed up in the medical clinic that was our stuff, because we had planned to come back down there and move into another house.
But you get home and there's a crisis that hits, and then you start thinking about, now you're thinking about babies.
Yeah.
So
that was, we ended up, getting good jobs, great jobs. I went right back into my career that I left before we moved to Honduras. We bought a house, we had 2 kids, bought some nice cars, got a dog, the whole,
So
the whole American
what
dream
happened?
thing.
What started the churning again?
So we, I think it was 2018. I was contracting for Delta Airlines, doing fiber optic work for them out at the airport and at their headquarters. All their audio visual stuff, anything low voltage networking related, we were doing it. And I was working probably, including travel, 12, 13 hours a day. And I was just getting burnt out. And Nikki had been, saying for a long time, we really need to look at going back to Honduras. We never really felt released to leave there. And I didn't really want to have that, because I was making good money. We had 2 kids. That just didn't seem feasible anymore. When we were broke and poor, didn't have anything to lose.
It's an adventure.
It was an adventure.
It's all good.
Yeah. But I had to be a grown up at some point.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't want to do it. And probably for 9 months, she felt 100% in. She was ready to do it. And I just wasn't. And we finally decided to go to Honduras, spend 10 days, I believe it was, in Honduras, leave our kids with their grandparents, and just go see what was going on. We really didn't have a plan. Nikki, I really didn't care to do it, but Nikki really wanted to go. So we
happy wife, happy life. Let's do this. So, maybe it gets out of her system, right?
Yeah. So we bought some tickets, bought some plane tickets, and there's a cool little side story about Nikki's brother with that. But he, at that time, he wasn't doing well. He was mixed up in some drugs and things. And when Nikki bought the play, they had tried to send him to rehab, and it didn't work out. In fact, there was a point where they didn't know where he was. He was just gone. Mm-hmm. And I told Nikki, she called me on the phone at work one day. She's like, I really want to do this. I really want to go on this trip. I was like, all right, buy tickets. So she went online like right then and bought plane tickets to go to Honduras. And immediately after that, she got a call telling her that her brother was going to rehab and checking himself in. And we had been going through Jonah at church, actually. And your dad, Pastor Sandy, was talking about Jonah and about the ship. And sometimes, you're the Jonah on your ship, or there's a Jonah on your ship that's causing this storm. And so we were sitting at lunch with David and Renee after church, and it got brought up, and there was a conversation that maybe David was the Jonah in the family. And he was doing all these crazy things, and that was kind of like causing everybody else to have this stressful life. And Nikki looked at her mom and she's like, no, it's me and Kenneth. We're the Jonah. We're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're not where we're supposed to be called.
And it's putting everyone in danger.
And it's putting everybody in danger. And so it's like immediately, Nikki said she was sitting at her cubicle at work, and she said immediately she got the confirmation for those tickets and that she got the call. And she said she felt like that was like the storm calming. And so I was kind of on board after that. I was like, all right, this is pretty cool.
You're like, because I know if I'm not a big fish comes out, like, we get eaten alive.
Yeah. So we go on this trip. Nikki did all this groundwork, set up all these meetings with other missionaries, and we met with a whole bunch of missionaries. We met with a couple that did fundraising. That was their whole thing, was teaching missionaries how to raise support. We met with a guy that digs wells. We met with an orphanage, a couple different orphanages, and we sat down one night towards the end of the trip, and Nikki's like, well, if we were to come here, who would you feel called to work with? Because quite a few ministries said, hey, we could definitely use you. Come work with us. And I just kind of looked at her, and I said, I feel like all of them. Like, I feel like I'd want to work with every one of these ministries. And she's like, me too. She's like, I don't see how we can do that. And that's kind of what started that, along with our experience living in Honduras the first time, is kind of what started this idea of just going down and networking with other missionaries. There's so many people doing great things down there in Honduras. Why do I feel like I'm so special that I need to go down there and start a new thing, or start something different from everybody
or
else?
Do the same thing someone else is doing,
or do the same thing somebody else is doing with a different sign on the wall.
Right.
And we didn't see that. So we came back. We started a regular meeting with the Corbins, the couple that does the fundraising. I met with them for 18 months before I was able to get my act together, and we actually were fully funded. Having weekly meetings with them, Skype meetings with them while they're in Honduras. We're here in Atlanta, and they walked us through this whole thing. It was more than just fundraising, but they really guided us and helped us figure out this whole thing.
So this second time around, you felt like it was spot on. Like you knew more what you were doing, and hey, man, we have these weird winding roads that prepare us.
Yeah.
So because we're running out of time. I mean, I can only imagine, but COVID.
Yeah.
That hits.
So
what was life like in Honduras with COVID?
So we didn't know what we were doing. When we did all our support meetings, our fundraising meetings, we told people, like, what are you gonna do in Honduras? We don't really know. When we get there, we feel like God's gonna tell us. All we know is we want to work with other missionaries and network. And so we get there on February 6th, move into a house. The house is infested with multiple different things that shouldn't be there. We have to leave that house, and we finally get settled in our house. In a week, basically a week later, everything in Honduras shuts down. And when I mean, not like the U.S. shut down, like everything shut down. You were not allowed to be on the streets. There were no cars. There was no diesel fumes,
how do you
coming into our house.
How do you get food?
One thing, I guess, a positive thing about this is a whole new business started up, which was deliveries. There were a few days after
like
they shut everything
Honduran,
down,
DoorDash.
Basically, a few days after they realized, if we keep this shut down, people are probably going to starve to death pretty quick. And so they started giving out these salvoconductos, basically permissions to be out driving to deliver food. So food delivery people, food workers, supply chain people very quickly were introduced back to the workforce. But the general population was still confined to their homes. So we immediately realized the need that these people way up in the mountains, the coffee farmers, people that live way out in the more remote areas, they have no way to get here because they depend on buses and the one guy in their community that has a truck to drive them into town once a week to get food. And none of that was happening. It all was outlawed at that point. Travel was outlawed. And so another contact that I had called me up and said, hey, we're doing this. We're doing food distribution. I've got a lawyer friend. He's going to get us some of these special permissions to be circulating. You want to help? And so we, me and this guy and another probably 30 missionaries in our community, I was told, and I wasn't there for all these years, but I was told this is the first time this ever happened. But 35 missionaries got together, raised $75,000 within 6 weeks.
Wow.
And we were able to feed families, and not just give them a meal, but give them like a whole basket full of stuff to last them for 2 or 3 weeks.
Provisions.
Yeah. And so I spent from March I think Honduras shut down on March 17th, which was Nikki's birthday, was when the country shut down. So from March until September, we were doing food distributions because people still weren't allowed to go to work. And I was realizing around that point that maybe I'd misinterpreted what God was calling us to do, where I thought he was calling us once again, just like the first time, to go down and save the missionary community. And I realized, I think he wanted us to be there to experience it and be a part of this coming together of the missionary community in our area. And we were able to be a part of that. And it didn't take me and Nikki trying to like revolutionize anything or even trying to let people know that's what our goal was. It just
crisis changes things.
Yeah. And it changes things. And so September, everything kind of started easing up a little bit. And then in November, Honduras was hit by 2 back-to-back Category 4 hurricanes, and they both just sat on top of the country and just devastated the country. And so we had a short little break there where we weren't doing food distributions, and Nikki and I were like, well, what are we going to do? Like, what's the next step in this? And then we got hit by 2 hurricanes and spent the next four months doing hurricane relief work. And we're still, in fact, our ministry Bridges just helped another Honduran ministry build 9 houses that they just finished in, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. They just finished 9 houses that we were able to help fund with the help of our supporters, for people that lost not only the house that they lived in, but the property that their house sat on disappeared because of these floods.
Wow.
If someone wants to support you guys, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
So we our covering ministry is called Commission to Every Nation, and basically what they do is they are the backbone for a lot of independent missionaries across the globe.
Is there a website or some place that they can go to get your information?
Easy. It's c10.org, I believe, /Kenneth Snipes to go to our specific site.
Okay.
CTEN.org/Kenneth Snipes, and it pops up with our family's picture and just a little synopsis of what we're doing, and then the donate button.
Creighton, you're pulling that up to maybe add a link onto the comment section.
Absolutely.
All right.
Is it the right dot thing? It's .org.
C10.
Before I wrap things up with a few thoughts, Nick and Derek, you guys are the same age, roughly. How old are you, Ken?
I'm 31.
They are a little bit younger.
So you're a little bit younger. Yeah. But I mean, what are your thoughts? Just, I mean, running in, meeting a brother that, I mean, you guys, your tithes and offerings go to help supporting.
Yeah. No, it's super cool how like God works in those kind of ways too. And just, well, not necessarily throw you, but like we were talking about, just guide
we
you
were thrown. We felt like we were thrown. Yeah.
But no, and going through all that, because like being here and experiencing the pandemic while it's happened here, I can't even imagine what it was like there, because we get told like, oh, you have a curfew, and we're like, nope, and we just go outside with no repercussions. Like what it's like there to have to go through that, and like
it was under threat of arrest. It really was. I mean,
Jeez.
You were getting your car impounded and you were going to jail to be stuffed in a little tiny jail cell with like 30 other guys,
which apparently COVID does not spread,
not in jail or restaurants.
For sure.
Actually, Honduran restaurants, COVID does spread. It's U.S. restaurants
that it doesn't. Nick, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts, I mean, we're the same age. I went to Christian high school like you did, so there was plenty of opportunities for me to go and do it. I never had that heart. Like I was just one of those guys, and just hearing his stories and stuff is just like, I kind of wish I experienced that. Like everyone I think needs to experience that, because I always went back. I was like, nope, I'm safe. I'm in a safe place. Like I don't want to go somewhere that I have to risk. And that's just crazy that, I mean, probably every single day there's probably something that is a risk to you or your family and your kids. And that's just, for you to do that all because the Lord is putting it on your heart is very brave, and I love it.
A step of faith. I mean, every day you want to talk about walking by faith, for us,
I know
for us, and there's so much of our lives that, again, that's all a blessing from the Lord. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it's like, we provide for ourselves. There's self-provision. But when you're in a country where you don't have a work permit and you're depending on people to send you money and to get groceries, and what's the next step? I mean, there's this cool adventure of faith that I love and respect a lot. I'll say, I couldn't help but, David Livingstone was the famous British missionary to Africa. And we actually know most of the continent of Africa because of the explorations of of Livingston. David Livingston, I presume, is the kind of the famous famous line. And when he went back, and again, I might muff the story a little bit, but I'll get to the meat of it's solid. I think he went back to Britain for some medical issues, and the one stipulation in his will is that if he died in England, that they were to remove his heart and take it back and bury it in Africa, which is what they did. He died, and they took his heart, and they put it, and they shipped it, and they buried it in Africa, because Africa, like the Lord gave him a heart for Africa. And that's where his heart, he didn't care where his body was buried, but he wanted his heart to be in Africa.
Interesting.
And I just hearing from a young age, the Lord gave you a heart for Honduras, kind of a random place.
Yeah.
In the middle of South America, Central America, and just an amazing thing. And that's something you can't explain. It's something that might not even come across being very, very rational. It's something that, I'm sure you talk to your parents, especially Nikki, her parents, when you have kids, like, you don't understand. We have to go back to Honduras. There's something about, like, the Lord has done something in our hearts that we will be miserable apart from.
And we were.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, we had everything, but yet we just felt like we were living almost in misery. We love our kids. We loved each other. We had our family, but when you're not doing what God wants you to do, where you're not where he wants you to be,
exactly.
That's a tough place.
And I think
even if you're here in USA,
I think that's a great application for anyone that happens to be either watching or listening, whether it's the mission field or whether it's, sharing your faith to the person in the cubicle. Like, if the Lord's putting in something on your heart, you need to obey, and there's a reason for it. I'll close. We're running out of time, and first pitch is in about 9 minutes. But I will say, and I would have loved to have gotten into this even more, but we have they estimate it'll be 2 million illegal immigrants that will have migrated across the border in 2021. An astronomical number of people. It's Atlanta and the suburbs, an entire city and the suburbs moving, from the third world into America. How do we educate these people? How do we feed these people? How do we provide medical care for these people? And there's a lot of Americans that are sitting here thinking, like, we have high inflation. We have serious homelessness problems. Most of us don't have insurance. The insurance we have is terrible. You can walk across the border and get health care. I've been a citizen my whole life, and I don't. If I have a medical condition, it's going to bankrupt me. And like, a lot of Americans are seeing what's happening at the border, and they understand, hey, there's a hurting world out there. Why do they need to come here? Because we're also broken. We have major issues of our own. And what I love about it is, you have liberal wings within Christianity that like to use the federal government as their benevolence, as their charity wing. That's not the function of the federal government. The church has been giving a calling, and let's not use the arm of the state to accomplish what was given to the church. And in no place, shape, or form was the church ever commissioned to stay in one place and allow the world to come to them. That was the old covenant. There was a temple, and there was a location, there was a nation, and if you were in the world and you wanted God, you came here. And this is the place that you could connect with God. And then Jesus flipped it all around again in the Great Commission, where he tells his followers, it's not about people coming here to encounter God. It's about you going into the world to make disciples of the nations. And I just find it to be such a cool thing, like, especially in the environment where we have so many from Central and South America coming here. And again, that's a different topic for another day about how the church should deal with that. I love the fact that we have brothers going there and saying, let me bring the gospel, and let me bring love, and let me bring practical needs and discipleship. And I think it's such a cool thing. And brother, I appreciate you, what you do. You're in our thoughts and prayers always. Enjoy the vacation that you have, the time with, it's good for your kids to see their grandparents, and it's good for the grandparents to see their grandkids.
Absolutely.
But thank you also for being on the Outlaw Radio Show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Deal Daddy, Nick, as always, thank you. Creighton,
Always a pleasure.
brother man, right on.
Go Braves.
Well, you've been listening to the Outlaw Radio Show. If you liked what you heard, check out our website, outlawradio.org. If you are watching the live stream, check out the podcast. Podcast that's available on Apple, Google, Spotify. Again, quick links, outlawradio.org. If you're listening to the podcast, check out the live show, outlawradio.live or facebook.com/the radio outlaw. Typically 8 p.m. on Wednesday, unless it's game 7 next week, and therefore it'll be at 7 o'clock. With all that being said, my name is Zach Adams. I hope you join all of us this time next week for more of the Outlaw Radio Show.